Would you breathe with me, please? Taking a deep breath. And again. And one more time, please. Something so special that happens when we breathe together. Just brings us all pretty much on the same page. So if any of you ever had someone in your life who just bugs you, someone who knows how to get a rise out of you seemingly without effort, someone who just pushes your buttons, And ironically, isn't that person often someone really close to you? Like a relative or a loved one or a coworker? Yeah. Somebody recently gave me an explanation for that, which just made so much sense for me. The reason why our family members or the people close to us know where our buttons are is because they put them there. Yeah. If you think about it, though, oftentimes the people who know us best are the people we either grew up with. This is no reflection here. People that we grew up with are people that we spend a lot of time with, right? And our buttons, you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about those sensitive areas of our lives. I kind of feel that they're right here, and people can just do like this, right? But those sensitive areas of our lives that are subject to being pushed began when someone that we knew did or said something that we had a reaction to. And oftentimes, that was when we were little. So many of our buttons were established when we were little kids. For example, Philip agrees with me. I was a pretty rambunctious little kid. Yeah, it's true. I talked a lot. I talked loudly. And this one is going to really shock you. I liked being the center of attention. So all my life, my dad, who was a very quiet and very retiring man, would say things to me like, Pat, lower your voice. Pat, don't talk so much. Pat, settle down. And I would always feel so embarrassed about it, and I would be ashamed that I was too loud, and I was boisterous. So I got to tell you, it developed a huge button for me right here. And if somebody ever implicated that I talked too much or that I was too loud, I would immediately react with either anger or shame. I would want to cry, or I would want to lash out loudly and boisterously and say to them, you're not the boss of me. You can't tell me to be quiet. Now, I know that my father would never knowingly ever hurt somebody or embarrass somebody on purpose, never. Because the truth was, he was a shy man, and he didn't like being the center of attention. So when I was loud or obnoxious and I drew attention to us, it pushed one of his buttons. Yes? Buttons that were probably established by one of his family members when he was young. Wayne Dyer said, how people treat you is their karma. How you react is yours. Yeah. Right? And this is a super important part of today's lesson, because whenever somebody pushes our buttons, oftentimes they don't even know they're doing it. They're reacting to buttons of their own. Yes? Nod your heads if you're agreeing with me. And sometimes people are just mean, and they just want to push our buttons. It's the truth. It's the truth. So what do we do then? Do we leave? Do we quit? Do we fight back? Because that seems to be our reaction a lot of times. But most of us don't want to leave our button-pushing relationships, right? We just don't want to. What we want is for the other person to stop doing what they're doing so that we can be at peace. In other words, we want the other person to change. But what I've discovered in my life, and I imagine you've discovered in your life as well, is that people don't change because I want them to. Damn it. However, people can and do change how they are with us when we change. In other words, people cannot push, and they will not push our buttons if we move our buttons. And moving our buttons means that we're changing, they're not changing. And if we move them someplace where people want to push them, they can't find them. So today's lesson is about rewiring our buttons and putting them out of reach from the people who might want to push them, either consciously or unconsciously. One of the hardest things about attempting to live a life of spiritual principle, which is what we're doing, this is why we're here. One of the hardest things to get, folks, is that life shows up for us according to our thoughts and beliefs. Life shows up for us according to our thoughts and beliefs. In other words, as co-creators with life, if something is in our life, it is because we have somehow attracted it. Everybody go like this. Yes. Now, we don't do this consciously. We don't do this on purpose. It's usually an old belief that's lurking back in our subconscious mind. And because we don't know it's there, then when we have an experience that comes up that is a reflection of what this belief system is, that's what our button is. We've got this belief, and then it comes up for us to learn from. Here's how Ernest Holmes put it. It is as if the law of life were giving back to each one of us exactly what we have projected into it. And so everything that goes out from us must again return by a law of action and reaction. Take a deep breath. So let's take, for instance, my button about being too loud and talking too much. If I didn't have some sort of a shame-filled belief system from my past experiences that I was ashamed of being loud and boisterous, then somebody implying it wouldn't bother me. Does that make sense? If I was not ashamed of it, then somebody saying it wouldn't bother me. In fact, if I was somehow proud of my outgoing nature, because that's what I call it, if I was proud of my outgoing nature, or I simply didn't care that people thought I talked too much or that I was too loud, then somebody saying something to me about it would not be any sort of big deal. Somebody says to me, "You're too loud, you're too boisterous," and I actually celebrate that part of me, woohoo! There wouldn't be any button to push. So part of rewiring our buttons is replacing those old and negative beliefs that we have about ourselves. And we replace them with higher vibration, more life-affirming, more positive beliefs about ourselves. When I first, before I came into this teaching, and Beth can absolutely attest to this, I was always getting in trouble for talking too much and on my jobs and being disruptive. Always, when they would have the review, Pat. So my buttons, I didn't know any better. So my buttons, they're right there for everybody to push, right? And sure enough, they got pushed all the time. However, as I began to wake up to my own divinity, wake up to my spiritual magnificence, wake up to my own God-given specialness, I began to embrace my enthusiasm. Yeah. I began to capitalize on it. In other words, instead of being ashamed of it and allowing it to rule my life through my buttons, I began to use it to enhance my life rather than detract from it. And now, I actually make my living doing this. Those character flaws that I was always in trouble for, and I was always being told that loudness, that boisterousness, that meanness is actually an asset. It's part of my job to be enthusiastic. So here's the question, folks. What changed? Did the people in my world change? Or did I change? Of course, I changed. And I did it by rising above the old way of thinking and being and seeing my life from a higher perspective. I did it by aligning myself with my higher self and by believing that who I was and what I had to offer had value. Is this making sense? Yeah. But here's what's interesting. I still get flack for being too boisterous. I do. Being too loud. Trying too hard to be funny. I'm funny. Sometimes you're just too big energetically. And the difference is those shame buttons, they're gone. They've been replaced with atta-girl buttons. It's like, you think I got a big energy? Have at it. It just doesn't bother me anymore. So here's what Ernest Holmes said. In such degree as we can shift the basis of our imagery, our belief, our emotional and mental reactions to life, we can come to a place individually of peace and security and happiness. Then gradually, as these changes take place, there will be a corresponding change in our environment. Yowza. When we change our insides, our outsides change. It just happens. When we let go of an old belief that doesn't serve us any longer and adopt a new belief, the outside world cannot help but correspond and shift to accommodate the change. And what many of us do, however, is that we try to change the outside world first. Try to change our environment first. Yes? Yeah. When my life gets easier, when that person stops being mean, when my job changes, when my boss leaves, when the kids grow out of that phase, and then people won't push my buttons anymore. Then I'll work on my buttons. But it doesn't work like that. We have to move our buttons first, preferably higher. Because when we move our buttons higher, they're not so easy for people to reach. Albert Einstein said, no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. No problem can be solved with the same level of consciousness that created it. And it is our consciousness, it is our belief systems, it is our old way of being and thinking that created our buttons, which in turn create our experiences. So in order to rewire them, we have to rise above the problem. We have to rise above the issue in our minds and see the situation from a spiritual perspective. So I have 7 tools on how to rewire our buttons. You guys want to hear them? Yeah? Okay. The first one is to acknowledge what your buttons are reflecting about you. The good, the bad, and the ugly. What are your buttons saying about you? Because once you see, it keeps showing up. It keeps showing. Anybody here repeat patterns? Yeah? Yeah, keep showing up. Keep showing up. Those are those buttons. They keep coming up. What is that teaching you? What is that telling you about you? Because once you see what they're reflecting, you can see that it's an opportunity to grow, to change, to expand. Second one is recognize where else this same feeling is showing up in your life. Those are patterns again, right? You probably feel this way with more than one person. Is that a fair thing to say? Yeah? I mean, if one person pushes your buttons, chances are other people push that same button. Yeah. So examine what other people or what other situations are bringing about the same emotions that you're having. This is all about awareness, right? The next one is let go of the need to change someone else. We just talked about that. This one's going to be hard. Let go of the need to be right. Let go of the need to be right, thereby make them wrong. What's that song by Meghan Trainor now? I just love it. I don't want to fight tonight. I'm going to let you be right. Right? You know what? I just don't want to go there. I don't need to be right, thereby make you wrong. I don't need to do that. So give up the expectation of how things need to be. Pay attention to your insights about the situation. Figure out where those insights are coming from. Take the soul card workshop. Figure out where those insights, what's your soul trying to tell you, right? And then you're going to know how to be. You're going to know how to respond. Because when your buttons get pushed, sometimes, folks, the right way to respond is to not respond. Sometimes when your buttons get pushed, it's simply to step out of the way. What's the other saying? Oh gosh. If somebody, is it like take your sails out of the wind? Something like that? The wind out of your sails. But if somebody's coming at you, just take your sails out of the wind. Yeah? Yeah. See, I get downloads sometime. So paying attention to your insights. Remember the bigger picture. This one is big, folks. This one is important. We're all in this big, beautiful, messy universe. Life is messy. We're all here. Everyone and everything is connected, even the button pusher. Everyone is here to provide us with growth and learning and expansion. I'm going to say that again. Everyone is here for our growth. The next one is remember that choices are available to you. You know, you can choose not to allow that person to ruffle your feathers, or you can let the feathers fly. You can make choices. You can set boundaries that are best for you, or you can continue to feel stressed. You have a choice. You can try to change someone else, or you can change how you react and how you act. You always have choices. And the last one, treat others the way you want to be treated. You know, this is a golden rule, but I'm going to elaborate upon it. If you want other people to consider your feelings, to respect you, to do things to you, for you, to be loyal and kind and caring and all that others, then ask yourself, how are you treating your button pushers? Are you treating them with loyalty and kindness and caring and respect? How are you treating your button pushers? Number one, And number 2, do you treat yourself the way you want to be treated? Yikes. I've heard it said that we actually train people how to treat us by treating ourselves that way. So by practicing these very simple tools, you can bring about tremendous changes in your life, because in doing so, what you're doing is rewiring your buttons from the inside out. And that's all I got to say about that. I love you, and so it is. And know with me that there is only one presence, one life, one source, one infinite intelligence that lives and moves and has its being by means of its creation. Each one of us is part of that divine mind. Each one of us has the life force energy living itself through us. Each of us is God at a local address. And because we are co-creators with this divine mind, with this infinite intelligence, when we work in harmony with it, when we work within its parameters, it moves and creates according to the thoughts that we provide. And so what I know right now is that if there is any of us who is experiencing consistent button pushing, consistent having a challenge with someone, what I know is that we now purposely, consciously choose to change those buttons, to move them out of the way, to take our sail out of the wind, to use that analogy, that each of us, and we do this consciously. We do this because we know that we are in partnership with this divine energy that responds to us. And what I know is that as we are utilizing this divine energy that is us, through us, and as us, that our world begins to shift. Because our thoughts begin to shift, because our attitudes begin to shift, because what we believe is true, what we believe is in principle, is taking a higher vibration. And I know that as the shift takes place inside, it cannot help but shift on the outside. And so our buttons are no longer available to be pushed. We are in harmony with life. And every person with whom we come in contact sees and recognizes and responds to the being of light, to this love being that we are. There is harmony. This is how we create a world that works for everyone. I'm so grateful to know this truth. I'm so grateful to speak this truth and to live from this truth. So I release this treatment into the law, knowing the law is already at work. So I just allow it to be so. As together we affirm, and so it is.